Make a conscious decision and effort to know that if I'm going to be involved, I'm going to be involved 100% plus. This work is not easy, and you have to turn off the negative vibes. I ain't going to the meet because it's okay. Everybody's not going to be able to make every meet, but if you decide to come, be all in. I want to thank you for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're so
That
welcome.
was so informative and I think inspirational. So our last and final speaker is Mordecai Cargill. And Mordecai Cargill is the manager of fund development at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. So Cleveland Neighborhood Progress isn't actually a CDC, but what they do is they help CDCs develop capacity and also they help CDCs with funding. So just briefly, Mordecai is a graduate, or Mr. Cargill is a graduate of Yale University. He is a Cleveland native and he is also very much engaged in helping to revitalize the community. He's actively volunteered, but in his position at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, he oversees grant seeking and also management processes for Cleveland Neighborhood Progress and its subsidiaries. He also provides project management for initiatives. So when they engage in an initiative, he helps manage those certain projects and think about organizational strategic direction and also thinking about how to make an impact on local community development and thinking about the local community development as a certain industry, right? So how do we make an effort to improve CDCs and their capacity to have an impact? So in some sense, it's an umbrella, I won't say an umbrella organization, but an organization that serves as an advocate and a supporter and a developer of CDCs. And so that's why I'm so happy that he's here. And unfortunately, you only have a few minutes to speak. But thank you so much, Mr. Cargill.
Hey. Thank you, Cassie. I have the distinct pleasure of having to follow Ms. Caldwell, so everyone please bear with me. I'm going to be very brief and hopefully interesting. I don't want to put anybody to sleep. So, as Cassie mentioned, I work for Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, and it's a local community development funding intermediary that invests in operating capacity for the entire CDC network. Neighborhood Progress was started in 1988 by the kind of the convergence of some of the three largest funders in our area: Cleveland Foundation, Gun Foundation, and Mandel Foundation. They came together and they decided, we got to do something about the trends of disinvestment that we've been seeing in Cleveland over the past, however many years before they decided to put their talents together and create an entity that would marshal resources from philanthropic, government sources, private sector sources to invest in the people who actually do the work. So I think our organization is in a very unique position because we're actually intermediaries. So it means we fill like a gap between the people who have all the money and the people who really need the money. So I'm like you said, I'm the fund development manager. So I do a lot of the grant writing, a lot of the reporting, and all that stuff. So I totally feel you about the need for resources. But in that position, it allows us to really serve as that hinge between the people who are doing the work on the ground and how do we get the most out of the somewhat limited resources that are available to invest in neighborhood revitalization. So over the course of our 25 plus year history, Neighborhood Progress has experienced a lot of changes. And so has the community development industry as a whole. The industry has kind of shifted from a real central focus on the built environment and how do you improve the physical, the way that our neighborhoods look. In 2012. we actually commissioned the Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences, and one of our really talented researchers, Mark Chuff, is here. They did an organizational assessment which really precipitated this merger of 3 organizations: Neighborhood Progress Inc., which some of you might be familiar with, which really was kind of leading like kind of traditional bricks and mortar community development. CNDC, which was a trade association for the Community Development Network, and so I guess I'm going to wrap it up. And then Live Cleveland, which is a neighborhood marketing organization. So these organizations came together to essentially create a product or an entity that is truly greater than the sum of its parts. You know, it has the capacity to do development, has the capacity to market the neighborhoods, and it also has the has almost a philosophical shift to put people at the center of community development. So since that time, we've been really intentional about advancing comprehensive community development. As my fellow panelists have already mentioned, it's critical that people are at the center of community development, because we truly believe that as neighborhoods continue to thrive and all these resources are invested into the neighborhoods, and we're starting to see the fruits of that labor in places like downtown and University Circle and Ohio City and Northeast Shores. It's critical that the people who live in these neighborhoods are able to stay in those neighborhoods, and they're able to benefit from their neighborhood's revitalization. So quickly, the merger strengthened our ability to serve as a thought leader, and that's kind of how we advance comprehensive community development. As an investor, which is really how these projects actually come to life. And I would say the thought leadership component is directly related to the investor piece, because people like your thoughts more if you have some money behind them. So, but I think it was a very it was an obvious shift to put people at the center of community development, and the rest of the network has really started to really embrace that as a best practice. And then the last kind of role we play for the industry is as a convener. We're like I said, because we're an intermediary, we sit in this really interesting vantage point where we're between the funders and the people on the ground who do the actual tactical work of neighborhood revitalization. So we're able to get all these partners in the room. We're able to align all of our common interests, which is ultimately stronger neighborhoods, more vibrant neighborhoods, more equitable neighborhoods. We're able to leverage all of our assets and all of our resources to really make some of these things, these really interesting projects, come to life. I guess in closing, because I was asked to talk about the history, and I was asked to talk about how Neighborhood Progress supports CDCs, and I think the best way of kind of describing that, and I also had a presentation, but I walked in on the tail end of Brian's, and I was like, wow, mine is not nearly as artistic, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna spare you all, but I